All right, so today we're diving deep into something you guys specifically asked about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the FDA's accelerated approval pathways. You
Okay.
want to know how these life-saving treatments get to patients faster?
Mm.
And that's exactly what we're going to break down today. So
Yeah.
we're going to be looking at breakthrough therapy designation,
Right.
orphan drug designation, and fast track.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
about,
yeah,
speeding up the process when time is really important.
absolutely. So let's just start with this breakthrough therapy designation.
Okay.
It sounds kind of, I don't know, pretty serious. So
Yeah.
what exactly does it mean for a drug to be considered a breakthrough?
Well, it's basically reserved for drugs that show a really substantial improvement over existing therapies.
Okay.
And these are for serious or life-threatening conditions.
Gotcha.
Like imagine a drug that, not only treats a hard-to-treat cancer, but actually shrinks the tumors dramatically.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
that's a game changer.
Yep.
So it sounds like it's not just about getting the drug reviewed faster, but also about getting expert guidance from the FDA, like throughout the entire process.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
the FDA actually works very closely with the drug developers
Right.
to make sure that the research is good and that things are moving along as quickly as possible.
Yep.
It's kind of like having a direct line to the top people at the FDA who
Yeah.
are all focused on getting that treatment to patients who really need it.
Okay, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
now you mentioned rare diseases.
Yeah,
That's where orphan drug designation comes in, right?
exactly.
So this pathway really focuses on those diseases that affect a smaller number of people.
Mm-hmm.
Fewer than 200,000 in the U.S., I think you said?
Yeah, fewer than 200,000 in the U.S.
Okay, so is there
Right.
is there any specific reason why it's 200,000?
Yeah, so that's actually the FDA's threshold for what they consider a rare disease.
Okay.
And, because these diseases only affect a small number of people, there's not as much of a financial incentive for companies to invest in research.
Yeah, I can see how that
Yeah.
would make sense.
Yeah.
It's just not as profitable.
So how do we encourage companies to really focus on these patients that might otherwise not get the treatment they need?
Well, that's really where this orphan drug designation comes in.
Okay.
It kind of acts as a like a support system
Okay.
that offers companies these different incentives like tax credits and waived fees
Oh, wow.
and even a period of market exclusivity if that drug ends up getting approved.
So it's kind of like a reward in a way for taking on this challenge of developing these treatments.
Exactly.
Okay.
And all of this is actually laid out in 21 CFR 316,
Right.
which is part of the Code of Federal Regulations.
All right.
So that's like the official rule book
Got
for
it.
this designation.
Okay, so we've got breakthrough therapy and we've got orphan drug.
Yeah.
But there's another one, right?
Yeah.
Fast track.
Fast track.
That's a really does it live up to its name?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So fast track is all about making the development and review of drugs faster for serious conditions where there's really a huge unmet need.
Right.
So think about diseases where there are currently no treatments,
Right.
It's about getting those breakthroughs to people as fast as possible.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what does this fast track actually look like? Like, are we cutting corners here?
No, not at all.
Oh.
It's all about being efficient without compromising safety or thoroughness.
Okay.
So with Fast Track, drug developers can have more frequent meetings and more direct communication with the FDA.
Okay.
And they also benefit from this thing called a rolling review.
Rolling review, okay?
Yeah, so this means that the FDA can actually review sections of the drug application as they're completed,
Oh.
instead of waiting for, the whole package at the end.
So it's like, you're kind of jumping ahead in line
Yeah, you could say that.
instead of having to wait for everyone else.
It's about making the process faster without sacrificing the rigorous evaluation that every drug has to go through.
Okay, so we're speeding things up.
Right.
But what about safety?
Right.
It seems like that would be a major concern, right?
Yeah, of course. And you're right to point that out.
Yeah.
Safety is the most important thing no matter what.
Right.
Regardless of the approval pathway.
Okay.
So every drug, whether it's fast-tracked or not, has to meet really strict safety standards.
So how does the FDA make sure that those standards are being met, even when we're using these faster pathways?
So there's actually a whole network of regulations and guidelines that basically govern every single step of the process.
Okay.
Think of it like a
I guess safety net.
a safety net that's woven from international standards and specific FDA regulations.
So what are some of the key, players in this safety net?
Well, first, you've got the ICH guidelines, which are these international standards for how pharmaceuticals are developed. These cover things like clinical trial design, data analysis, and recording.
Okay.
So, for example,
Yeah.
ICH E10 provides very specific instructions for choosing the right control groups in clinical trials
Right.
to make sure there's a strong comparison between those who are receiving the drug and those who aren't.
So that's how they make sure the results of these trials are actually reliable,
Yeah,
even if they're on a faster timeline.
exactly.
So are there other things in place
Yeah.
to make sure that everything is
Well, then there's the Code of Federal Regulations,
Right.
or CFR,
okay?
specifically Title 21.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the FDA's detailed regulations for drug development are all spelled out.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Parts 110 and 111 outline current good manufacturing practices,
The CGMPs.
the famous CGMPs.
Yeah, I remember those from a previous deep dive.
Right.
And that's all about making sure that the manufacturing facilities are
Yeah.
up to par, clean, organized,
Yeah.
and that they're keeping good records.
Exactly.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about getting these treatments to patients quickly. So the CGMPs are kind of like
Yeah.
the rule book for how drugs are made.
Yeah, like a rule book for pharmaceutical manufacturing.
Keeping everything squeaky clean and
By the book.
by the book, exactly.
Yeah.
So what other parts of Title 21 come into play here?
Well, you've got Parts 202 and 203,
Okay.
which focus on advertising for prescription drugs.
Right.
So it's all about transparency, making sure that ads are truthful,
Right.
balanced, and that they're providing patients with accurate information
Yeah.
about the benefits and the risks of a medication.
Yeah, because, patients need to be able to make informed decisions,
Exactly.
especially with new treatments.
Yeah.
So what else is in Title 21?
Well, there's also Part 211,
Okay.
which basically goes into even more detail about CGMPs,
Okay.
but specifically for finished pharmaceuticals. So this section covers everything from personnel qualifications to equipment maintenance, testing procedures, handling of materials.
Wow. So it really does.
Yeah, it's very over a lot.
It's all about preventing contamination
Yeah.
and guaranteeing drug quality.
Right.
So
it's like a
yeah.
super detailed checklist for the entire manufacturing process
Yeah.
and making sure that everything is done correctly,
Right.
no matter how fast things are moving.
Exactly.
And what other regulations should we be thinking about?
Well, we can't forget about Parts 310, 312, and 314,
Okay.
which cover the whole new drug application process.
Right.
So the entire journey of getting a drug approved by the FDA.
Okay.
And that includes things like clinical trial requirements, labeling, post-market surveillance, and even the procedures for withdrawing approval if safety issues come up later on.
Wow, so they really have thought of everything.
And of course, we have Part 316,
Right.
which, as we mentioned before, lays out the specifics of the orphan drug designation. Gotcha. Okay.
So
even with these accelerated approvals,
yeah,
it's clear that safety is a top priority throughout the whole process.
absolutely.
But what happens after a drug is approved?
Yeah.
Does the FDA just
Step back and say, good luck.
good luck out there?
Well, that's a great question, and it leads us to another really critical part of these pathways.
Okay.
Post-market surveillance.
Right. So they're not just giving a thumbs up and walking away.
Yeah, exactly.
Just still keeping an eye on the drugs.
Post-market surveillance is all about tracking the drug's long-term effects and spotting any potential safety concerns
Right.
that might not show up until after it's available to the public.
Okay.
So it's like an ongoing safety check, just making sure everything's running smoothly.
So how does this post-market surveillance actually work?
Well, the FDA collects data from a whole bunch of different sources,
Right.
including reports from healthcare providers
Okay.
and even patients themselves. So, for example, if a doctor notices that a patient is having like a really unusual reaction to a new drug,
Right.
they report it to the FDA.
So it's kind of like a collaborative effort here,
Yeah, exactly.
with doctors and patients playing a really important role in making sure these drugs are safe.
Absolutely. So the FDA can also require drug manufacturers to conduct additional studies after the drug is approved,
Oh, okay.
just to gather more information on the long-term safety and effectiveness.
Gotcha.
And if, any red flags are raised,
Yeah.
the FDA can step in and take action,
Okay.
such as updating the drug's labeling with new warnings,
Right.
or even, in some cases, pulling the drug from the market if it's necessary.
So they really do have the power to,
Yeah.
hit the brakes.
They can hit the brakes even after a drug has been approved.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a pretty powerful system for keeping patients safe.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, so post-market surveillance is a really important part of ensuring that all the medications we use remain safe and effective throughout their lifespan,
Right.
even as new information is discovered.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've talked about all this in theory, but I think it would be helpful to see some
Oh, yeah.
real-world examples of how this works.
Absolutely. So remember when we talked about quality by design
Oh, yeah, QBD.
back on day 10?
Right.
Yeah, that was all about building quality into a drug right from the start. And that approach has actually been really helpful for a lot of these breakthrough therapies, especially for things like cancer and rare diseases, because manufacturers can adjust their processes quickly and efficiently based on new scientific knowledge as it comes out.
So it's kind of like you have this,
It's like a roadmap for continuous improvement, ensuring the best quality every step of the way.
Yep.
And then remember day 12 when we talked about the control of impurities.
Oh, yeah.
the ICH guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
Q3A to Q3E,
Right, right.
those played a big role there.
Yeah.
So that was all about those tiny but potentially problematic
Right.
molecules that can sneak into drugs during manufacturing.
Yeah.
And those guidelines have actually been super important for ensuring the safety of a lot of medications,
Yeah.
including those that are approved through these accelerated pathways.
Right.
By setting these strict limits on impurities,
Yeah.
we basically minimize the risk of unexpected side effects.
Right. So those guidelines are kind of like a microscopic quality control team.
Yeah.
Making sure the drug
Exactly.
is super pure and free from any surprises.
That's a great way to put it.
So,
And then on day 14,
okay.
we talked about current good manufacturing practices.
The CGMPs.
Yeah, the CGMPs.
Yeah.
Those comprehensive rules
Yeah.
that basically control every single part of drug quality during manufacturing.
Right. I remember that
Yeah.
deep dive.
Yeah.
Everything had to be like meticulous, right? From facility design
Correct.
to personnel training and record keeping.
Yeah.
Everything. So
Yeah. So it's all about making sure that
Yeah.
everything is done right.
those CGMPs are critical for keeping quality and safety up,
Right.
particularly for drugs that are approved through these expedited pathways.
Yeah.
It's all about making sure that
Very good.
faster approvals don't mean
Yeah.
sacrificing quality or
Right.
patient well-being.
Okay.
And of course, let's not forget about our discussion on controlled substances on day 15.
Oh, right.
Those are the drugs with a higher potential for abuse and dependence.
Yeah.
So they're subject to much stricter regulations.
And I remember we talked about how
Yeah.
it's like a balancing act.
Yeah, it's about balancing
Right.
access to important medications
Right.
with the risk of misuse.
Right.
So
So
even when a drug is approved through an accelerated pathway, the FDA is still very much involved in making sure that these drugs are used responsibly.
okay. So
Yeah.
so it's like an extra layer of security
Yeah, a double layer of
for
security.
those controlled substances,
Yeah.
even when they're on the fast track.
Right.
Are there any other past deep dives that are
Yeah, there is actually.
into this?
So on day 19, we talked about nutraceuticals and prescription drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Highlighting the different regulatory pathways
That was a good one.
for each.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to see how those two categories are actually held to such different standards
They are.
of scrutiny and oversight.
Okay.
So those differences are important to consider,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about these accelerated approvals, right?
Right.
Because for prescription drugs, particularly those that are meant for serious conditions,
Mm-hmm.
there's a real push to get them to patients quickly.
Yeah.
But that always has to be balanced with the need for safety evaluations.
Okay.
So it's all about weighing those potential benefits against the potential risks.
Right. Making sure that the good outweighs the bad.
Exactly.
Oh.
So it's a complicated balancing act.
Okay,
It
too.
is, but it's essential to make sure that that new medications are both innovative and safe.
For the people who need them.
Yeah, for the people who need them. So
It's clear that these accelerated pathways
Yeah.
are more than just a shortcut.
Right.
They're really shaping how drugs are being developed.
absolutely, they're influencing how
Yeah.
new treatments are developed and how patients access
Right.
potentially life-saving medications.
Yeah.
So
So we've covered breakthrough therapy designation,
Yep.
orphan drug designation,
Mhm.
fast track,
Mhm.
and this really robust system of regulations and post-market surveillance.
Right.
So it's uh, it's pretty clear that the FDA has a complex but effective system
Yeah.
to get these new drugs to market quickly but safely.
Yeah, you got it. And it's also important to remember that these pathways are constantly evolving.
They are.
Yeah, so new scientific advancements
Oh, they
are constantly changing how we understand drug development.
So it's like a dynamic process
Yeah.
that's always adapting to
It's always adapting.
new advancements in medicine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why it's so important to stay informed and to, be curious.
Right.
Because these pathways are playing a really critical role in shaping the future of healthcare.
Right.
So understanding them really empowers us to engage in these conversations about innovation, access, and the safety of the medications that we all rely on.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
This deep dive has been super insightful, and I'm sure our listeners picking up on everything.
Yeah, I hope so. It's always fascinating to see how these seemingly complex regulatory mechanisms can have such a big impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. Okay, so
before we get into that, let's just pause for a moment.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll be right back. We'll be back soon to explore even more about these fascinating accelerated approval pathways.
All right.
Okay.
Welcome back. So we've been talking about these FDA accelerated approval pathways. And it's clear that it's pretty complex.
It is.
We've talked about the regulations, the different designations, and even post-market surveillance. But it feels like there's like this one crucial element that we haven't really gotten into yet.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, what's that?
And that's data.
Data.
Yeah.
I knew data had to come up somewhere.
Of course. It's really at the heart of these accelerated pathways.
Okay.
It's not just about shortening the timeline. It's about using data in a more, I guess you could say, strategic and flexible way.
Okay, I'm interested.
Yeah.
How do these pathways change how we think about data?
Well, traditionally, drug approval has really relied on these, massive long-term clinical trials to prove that the drug is safe and effective. But those trials can take years.
Yeah.
Sometimes even decades.
Right.
And they cost a fortune.
Right. And for patients who are facing life-threatening conditions, time is precious.
It is. It is. So how do these accelerated pathways really address that?
Yeah.
Well, they allow for the use of what are called surrogate endpoints.
Surrogate endpoints.
Surrogate endpoints.
Okay, break that down for me because that sounds kind of technical.
But basically, think of them as markers that strongly suggest that there's a clinical benefit, even if they don't directly measure it.
So instead of waiting, years to see if a drug actually helps someone live longer, they might look at something that just indicates survival.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, in cancer trials, tumor shrinkage might be used as a surrogate endpoint. So if a drug, dramatically shrinks tumors, it's pretty reasonable to believe that it could also help people live longer, even if that hasn't been proven yet in a long-term study.
So using these surrogate endpoints lets the FDA make decisions faster and with less data.
Exactly. Right. But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
These pathways also use something called adaptive licensing.
Adaptive licensing.
Adaptive licensing.
That's another new one. What is that?
Imagine it like this.
Okay.
A drug can actually get approved based on really promising early data.
Okay.
But the continued collection and review of data has to keep happening.
Okay.
Even after the drug is on the market.
So it's like a prove it kind of situation.
Like, show me what you got.
Right.
So it's basically acknowledging that we might not have all the answers up front. We need to balance that urgency of getting these potentially life-saving treatments to people with the understanding that we're still learning about the drug's long-term effects.
So doesn't that make post-market surveillance even more important?
Absolutely. No. When a drug is approved based on, these surrogate endpoints or adaptive licensing, that ongoing data collection and monitoring is super important.
Right.
So we need to confirm that that initial promise, that glimpse of potential that we saw in the early data actually translates into, real-world benefits for patients.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about getting the drug out there.
Right.
It's about making sure that we can keep learning and refining our understanding of the drug.
Yep. Again.
People are using it.
It's a really dynamic approach to drug development.
Okay.
Where data is playing like a central role in making decisions and ensuring patient safety.
So we've got these surrogate endpoints. We've got this adaptive licensing.
Yeah.
But what if, the drug gets approved based on this early promising data, but then later on, studies show that it's not as effective as we thought?
That's a really good point, and it's something that the FDA takes very seriously.
Okay.
So even under these accelerated pathways, the data backing up those surrogate endpoints has to be really solid, scientifically sound.
So it's not like we're just picking random markers and hoping for the best.
No, not at all.
Okay, so there has to be a reason to think that they're actually...
There has to be a strong scientific reason to believe that they're predicting a real benefit.
Okay.
And the FDA is always, weighing those potential benefits of these quicker approvals against those risks of uncertainty.
Right.
So if any concerns come up, and they can and they will take action. And this could involve, requiring more studies, tweaking the drug's labeling, or even in some cases revoking the approval.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's always an element of...
There's always an element of risk assessment.
Yeah.
But it's always done with the patient's well-being as the most important thing.
Okay.
And the system actually has this ability to learn and adapt as new information comes out.
So it's not...
Drug development is a continuous process.
Right. It's not just like a one-time...
Yeah, it's not one and done.
...thing, right?
Not at all.
Okay, and as we've talked about, post-market surveillance plays a really critical role.
Absolutely. It's like a constant feedback loop.
Right.
Monitoring the drug's performance in the real world and adjusting course as needed.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. So we've got the accelerated pathways, using data in a more...
strategic way.
And then we've got this robust post-market surveillance, all kind of working together to get these treatments to patients faster while still being safe.
Precisely. It's about creating a system that's efficient, responsive, and that balances innovation with patient protection.
Okay, so earlier we talked about those ICH guidelines.
Yeah.
Are there any specific guidelines that deal with using surrogate endpoints or adaptive licensing?
Yeah, absolutely. So ICH Guideline E9, for example, provides guidance on the statistical principles of clinical trials, including how to use surrogate endpoints.
Right.
So it stresses how important it is to validate those endpoints, make sure they're reliable predictors of a real clinical benefit.
So we're making sure that surrogate endpoint is a good stand-in for what we actually want to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then ICH Guideline E17 focuses on planning and conducting those multi-regional clinical trials, which are often used for drugs that are seeking that accelerated approval. And these guidelines help ensure that the data that's collected from all those different populations is reliable and can actually support those approval decisions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it sounds like if we're going to use data to make these big decisions about drugs, we need to be sure that the data is...
We need to be sure the data is good.
Good.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Okay.
And so these guidelines basically provide a framework for conducting rigorous research and ensuring the quality and the reliability of the data that's used to support these accelerated approvals.
So it's clear these accelerated pathways are changing how we think about...
They're changing how we think about...
Drug development and approval.
Drug development and approval.
It's not just about speed. It's about using data in a smarter way.
It's about using data in a smarter way.
Okay.
And a more adaptable way.
And this shift towards making decisions based on data has the potential to really revolutionize how new treatments are brought to patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But as with any revolution, there are always challenges, right?
Of course.
What are some of those?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is just making sure that we have the capacity and the expertise to handle this massive amount of data that's being generated through these accelerated pathways.
Right.
So we need to be able to
collect it,
analyze it, and understand what it means.
Yeah. Because that sounds like a lot of information.
It is. It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
So how do we actually make sense of all this information?
Yeah.
Well, that's where advancements
Okay.
in technology and data science are really important.
Okay.
We need sophisticated tools,
Right.
and people who are really skilled in handling these complex data sets
Okay.
and extracting meaningful insights from them.
So it's not just about having the data.
No.
It's about...
It's about making the data work for us.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we really need to invest in things like data
Okay.
infrastructure,
Bro.
training, and collaboration between all these different scientific fields.
Right.
So it's a multifaceted challenge.
Yeah, it is.
But it's super important to address
Right.
if we want to,
Make this work.
if we want to really use these accelerated pathways to their full potential.
Potential.
Yeah, and another challenge we face is just ensuring that post-market surveillance that we talked about
Right.
is really robust
Okay.
and truly effective.
Okay, so we've talked about how important that is.
Right.
But how do we make sure that it's actually working?
Well, it really requires a very comprehensive approach.
Okay.
We need really strong systems for collecting data
Okay.
with really clear ways for healthcare providers and patients to report
Okay.
any potential problems or issues.
So making it easy for them to share their experience.
Exactly. Make it easy for them to share their experiences, good or bad.
Yeah.
And we need, we need the best data analysis techniques
Okay.
that can find those subtle safety signals
Right.
that might otherwise be missed.
So it's like we're searching for a needle in a haystack.
Yes, exactly.
But the haystack is made of data.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And then we need good ways to communicate important safety information
Right.
to healthcare providers and the public
Okay.
quickly and clearly.
So it's not just about gathering the data.
It's not just about gathering the data.
It's about making sure that it's being used.
Yeah, making sure that it's used to make good decisions
Right.
and to keep patients safe.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a real team effort to make sure
It is.
these accelerated pathways are being used responsibly.
It's about everyone working together
Yeah.
to get those innovative treatments to patients faster while always,
Putting safety first.
putting safety and well-being first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This has really opened my eyes to
Yeah.
all the different things that go into these pathways.
They are complex.
Yeah.
But
more than just a shortcut.
they're a whole new way of thinking
Yeah.
about
About drug development?
drug development.
Yeah.
And this new way of thinking really has the potential
Yeah.
to really transform healthcare.
Right.
So just imagine a world where, new promising treatments for serious diseases
Yeah.
can reach patients
Yeah.
in a matter of years,
Right.
not decades.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing.
It is exciting, but
Yeah.
as we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
with great potential
Comes great responsibility.
comes great responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot,
We have.
but it feels like there's still so much more to explore.
There is.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we're going to do when we return for the final part of this deep dive.
Sounds good. Welcome back to this deep dive. We've been on this really interesting journey through the FDA's accelerated approval pathways.
It has been quite a journey.
Right.
We've looked at regulations, untangled data analysis,
Yeah.
and we've even gotten a glimpse into what the future of drug development might look like.
And throughout all of this, we've really seen how these pathways are changing medicine and offering hope to patients.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
They're offering hope to patients facing serious and rare diseases.
Absolutely. But as with any powerful tool,
Right.
these pathways come with
They do.
the responsibility to use them wisely,
Responsibly.
ethically, and always with the patient in mind.
Absolutely. And that's where the conversation gets really interesting, right?
Right. So these pathways raise these really important questions
Yeah.
about like the balance between speed and safety.
Right.
Between,
Innovation.
groundbreaking innovation and accessibility for patients.
Yeah, you're right. They really challenge us to
Yeah.
rethink our traditional methods for drug development and approval, and to kind of embrace these new ways of thinking about data and evidence.
And to have these like really open and honest conversations about what it all means.
About, the trade-offs that are involved.
Yeah, because I mean, we're dealing with people's lives.
We are. We are. That's the heart of it all, right?
Right.
These pathways have this amazing potential to bring these life-saving treatments to people who otherwise wouldn't have any hope. But we have to be mindful of those risks and uncertainties.
So it's this really delicate balancing act.
It is. It requires careful consideration of everything.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's like the one key takeaway you want our listener to really think about?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing to remember is that these accelerated pathways aren't like a magical solution.
Right.
They're a really powerful tool,
Right.
but they require a thoughtful approach.
Because it's not just about speed.
No, it's not just about speed. It's about doing it right.
Right.
It's about making sure that those faster approvals don't mean that we're compromising safety or scientific rigor.
Okay.
It's about using data responsibly and transparently to make good decisions. And it's about acknowledging that drug development is it's a journey.
It's a journey, not a
destination, one-time thing.
Exactly. And it's a journey that really involves collaboration, communication, and this unwavering commitment to putting the patient first.
That's a great way to put it. These pathways have the potential to like really...
They do. They have the potential to revolutionize medicine.
Revolutionize medicine. But that revolution requires us to think critically, to ask tough questions, and to have those really meaningful conversations.
And never lose sight of the...
and to never lose sight of the human impact of these decisions.
Well said. So to our listener, keep learning, keep asking those questions.
Keep asking questions.
And keep advocating for progress.
Advocate for progress.
That's both innovative and responsible.
Yeah, because ultimately it's about making a real difference in the lives of the people who really need it most.
I agree. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
On this deep dive. Until next time.
Until next time.
Stay curious.